Have you seen or even played these games? Or what about these? What about these ones? You most likely know these. But do you know the relationship that all these games have? Well, they were all made by one company that became a titan in the gaming industry. Valve Corporation. Valve Corporation was founded in 1996 by two former Microsoft employees, Gabe Newell and Mike Harrington. Valve's first project was a first-person shooter based on horror. Its working title was Quiver. Valve had access to the Quake engine by id Software and heavily modified it to make their own Gold Source engine. The game was inspired by other first-person shooters, specifically Doom and Quake. However, the horror aspect of their game was inspired by Stephen King's novella, The Mist. They originally had trouble finding a publisher, however they eventually signed on with Sahara Online. And by 1997, the game was publicly shown at E3, and its release name was announced: Half-Life. Half-Life has the player play as MIT graduate Gordon Freeman, a silent protagonist who is running late for work. You as the player start on a tram ride that establishes the Half-Life world, and more specifically, the Black Mesa Research Facility. Following the end of the tram ride, Freeman has to get to a lab to perform an experiment. This experiment is specifically about portal technology and making a portal. However, the experiment goes wrong and alien species from another dimension, Zen, go through the portal and end up in Black Mesa. This failure of portal technology was the Resonance Cascade. Your goal as the player is to get out of Black Mesa following the disaster. However, the aliens and the United States Army, who want to cover up the event, get in your way. Additionally, a mysterious character watches you throughout your time at Black Mesa, called the G-Man. The G-Man takes particular interest in Freeman, and at the end of the game, he puts Freeman into stasis sleep, while he waits to wake up Freeman once the G-Man needs him awake. The game was supposed to be released later in November of 1997. However, there was a problem with the game. It wasn't the 3D models, 3D animations, and code itself that was bad. The problem was, the game wasn't fun, and there was a design cohesion. So Valve decided to release the game in 1998 due to prioritizing quality over speed, something that would later become known as Valve Time. Valve's prioritization of quality paid off, however, and once the game was released, it was met with critical acclaim. Half-Life made Valve a big name in the gaming industry. Following the success, Valve hired Gearbox Software to produce expansion packs for Half-Life. Only 3 expansion packs were made by Gearbox, but not as Freeman. These packs allowed fans to play the Resonance Cascade event, but rather as a security guard at Black Mesa, a US soldier who was sent to Black Mesa, and as another scientist at Black Mesa. Additionally, it would just be wrong to discuss Half-Life without the fan modding scene following the game's release. Just like Valve had modded Quake's engine to make their own games, fans modded Half-Life to make their own games, such as Counter-Strike in 1991 and Day of Defeat in 2001. Valve even acquired some of the modders and the mods like Counter-Strike and the popular Quake mod, Team Fortress. Valve had these modders make more titles and games for Valve, like Team Fortress Classic in 1999, which was a remake of the Team Fortress mod, but made with the Gold Source engine. Valve didn't just get modders following the success of Half-Life and its expansion packs. They started development on the next game in the Half-Life series, 6 months following the release of the original Half-Life. As Valve continued their work, something happened at the start of the new millennium. Co-founder of Valve, Mike Harrington, decided to leave Valve. since he was satisfied with the success of the company and didn't want to risk another project. So on January 15, 2000, Harrington left Valve. Even as one of its co-founders left, Valve still continued the development of the next game in the Half-Life series. One key part of this new game's development would be a new game engine. From 1996 to 2004, Valve games and expansion packs were still running on the Gold Source engine. So Valve decided to make a new engine that would just be known as Source. Valve developed the new engine at the same time as Half-Life 2, the successor to Half-Life. CEO and co-founder Gabe Newell wanted to redefine the FPS genre and gave the development team for Half-Life 2 unlimited time and all profits from Half-Life 1 to develop the game, with only one requirement: to make a worthy enough sequel. Once the team was told this, they began their work. One early question of the development was, where should this game take place? Although the development team had their options, their ultimate choice was an Eastern European-looking setting, which was suggested by Viktor Antonov. Another choice the development team took was to develop more on minor characters from Half-Life, after noticing players connected to the minor characters. Overall, it was going well for the team. Their physics engine was extremely realistic for the time, and even the animation was realistic. For example, the facial muscle expressions looked very realistic due to one of the animators, Ken Birdwell, studying the work of Paul Ekman, a psychologist who studied emotion and their relation to facial expressions. Moreover, Valve had even started developing a showreel in 2001 for E3 2002, and planned to announce the game in 2003. It wasn't just the Half-Life team who had been making progress. Valve had made progress on other games, like the released Counter-Strike Condition Zero in early 2004, and started developing the sequel to Team Fortress Classic, Team Fortress 2, and a remake of the original Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike Source. Valve was even getting new offices. However, one of the most important projects they started developing in 2002 was an online game distribution service called Steam. It was released in September of 2003. However, it wasn't great for long. In October of 2003, Valve servers had been breached. A German hacker exploited vulnerabilities in Valve's internal network and gained access to a lot of important projects like Half-Life 2 and early builds of Team Fortress 2 and Counter-Strike Source, and made these files public. Valve worked with the FBI, and Newell made a public statement explaining the leak and asking for public help on finding out more about the leak. The hacker emailed Newell asking for a job at Valve. He even explained how he hacked into Valve servers to prove this wasn't a fake email and to prove he was the real hacker. Newell responded by saying yes and holding a phone interview with him. After that, he invited the hacker over to Valve headquarters in Seattle, Washington for another interview. Newell didn't actually intend on giving the job to this hacker, but rather having the hacker be arrested by the FBI once they arrived at the airport. However, the hacker never took the flight to Washington and was arrested by German authorities. Following the incident, fans compiled a playable version of the leak, showing how unfinished the game was, even though Gabe Newell had intentions to release the game sometime during the holidays. This ultimately led Half-Life 2 to be delayed, and morale at Valve was at an all-time low. Following the Christmas of 2003, the development team returned to working on Half-Life 2. They worked in stressful conditions with long hours, and the project itself was taking $1 million per month, with no assurance that it would be finished soon. However, it would be finished in October of 2004, and it was released on Steam in November of 2004. Half-Life 2 takes place about 20 years following the Resonance Cascade. It starts with the mysterious character of the G-Man from Half-Life waking up Freeman. Freeman finds out that an empire called the Combine has taken over Earth and have their headquarters called the Citadel in City 17. And under negotiations with Dr. Wallace Breen, the former administrator at Sector C at Black Mesa, Earth was put under enslavement. resulting in a group of rebels called the Resistance, whose goal is to defeat the Combine and take back their freedom. Freeman meets some of the key members of the Resistance, which includes Eli Vance, Isaac Kleiner, Barney Calhoun, Dog, and Alex Vance. The player as Freeman, along with Alex Vance, helps the Resistance beat the Combine and Dr. Breen at the end of the game. Freeman does this by blowing up the reactor of the Citadel, causing an explosion, and just as the explosion happens, the G-Man appears, freezes time, and praises Dr. Freeman before putting him into stasis sleep once more. Half-Life 2 was released to critical acclaim, just like its predecessor. It was praised for its animations, graphics, story, voice acting, its AI, and much more. Additionally, Counter-Strike Source came out around the same time as Half-Life 2. It too was received well. However, one game that was released by Valve around this time that was not taken well was Half-Life Source. It was a remake of the original Half-Life, but made with the Source engine instead of the Gold Source engine. However, unlike Counter-Strike Source, it wasn't received well, mainly due to so many glitches and bugs. However, Valve would continue making games, not letting one bad egg ruin the rest of their projects. Some of those projects were some really good titles, like Day of Defeat Source, a remake of the original Day of Defeat mod, and Half-Life 2 Lost Coast, a removed level from Half-Life 2, and it was used to show the Source engine's HDR power. Then, two Half-Life games, titled Half-Life 2 Episode 1 in 2006, and Half-Life 2 Episode 2 in late 2007. Valve decided to take an episodic direction for the Half-Life series. Both episodes follow the story established in Half-Life 2, with Half-Life 2 Episode 1 primarily building up the player/Gordon's relationship with Alex. Both did also build up the story of Half-Life. Half-Life 2 Episode 1 starts with Vortigaunts, one of the alien species from Xen, saving Alex from the explosion and stopping the G-Man from interacting with Freeman. Alex and Freeman get to each other and talk with Dr. Kleiner and Eli Vance, leaving them with the decision of having to go back to the Citadel to delay the destruction of City 17 so they can escape City 17 before it explodes. While they're back in the Citadel, they do delay the explosion. Afterwards, Alex and Gordon get important information such as a recording of Dr. Mossman, which they decide to take back to the Resistance, and take a train out of City 17. However, the blast of the explosion knocks out Gordon and Alex. Episode 2 starts with Freeman waking up in the train after being knocked out. Alex helps him get out of the train and gets in contact with the Resistance, in which they find out the Combine uses the destruction of the Citadel to make a portal. The Combine plans to use the portal to bring in reinforcements to end the rebellion. Gordon and Alex make their way to the Resistance headquarters in White Forest. Once back, Gordon and Alex find out the Resistance are going to use a rocket to close the portal. Additionally, they give the Resistance the information and recording of Mossman. The recording proves the Borealis, a ship with portal technology that was made from a rival of Black Mesa, exists. Eli remembers the portal technology disaster of Black Mesa, so he convinces everyone it should be destroyed, and that they should rescue Dr. Mossman, if possible. After that, the Combine forces try to stop the Resistance from using their rocket, but the Resistance and Gordon fight them off and are able to close the portal using the rocket. Following that, Gordon, Alex, and Eli get ready to find the Borealis and hopefully rescue Dr. Mossman. But two Combine advisors jump all three of them. One of them kills Eli, and the second one tries to kill Alex. Luckily, Dog arrives and saves Alex, and scares the advisors away. The game ends with Alex holding her dead father and sobbing. Valve did plan to release the third episode for Christmas of 2007, but it was cancelled by Valve, and so was the episodic format. However, Valve did release something important in 2007, the Orange Box. It was a collection of 5 Valve games, Half-Life 2 along with both of its episodes, 2 new games which had been in development for a while, Team Fortress 2 and Portal, both of which were received very well. Team Fortress 2 had been in development since 1999. It was originally titled Team Fortress 2 Brotherhood of Arms, which was demonstrated at E3 1999, showing the game with a more realistic military look than the actual release of Team Fortress 2. In fact, Robin Walker, one of the original creators of Team Fortress, the Quake mod, was interviewed later and stated that the Team Fortress 2 team had gone through 3 to 4 different versions of the game during development. However, the final design was based upon 20th century commercial illustrations and had a more cartoony art style. This art style was shown in E3 2006, and is pretty much the art style that Team Fortress 2 was released with. Most of the gameplay is similar to Team Fortress Classic, both of which are multi-class online shooters with different game modes, but the gameplay for Team Fortress 2 was finer tuned. Upon release, it was received very well. Portal was the last game in the Orange Box. The player plays the role of Shell. She, like Freeman, is a silent protagonist. She wakes up from a stasis bed and gets instructions from an AI called GLaDOS to finish all the test chambers ahead, with the reward of cake at the end. Shell goes through the test chambers and is equipped with the portal gun during an early chamber, and has to go through the rest of the test chambers, which she has to solve with her portal gun. Once she gets to the end of the testing, she does receive a reward, but it isn't cake. It was a planned murder in an incinerator. However, Shell lives and goes on to destroy GLaDOS. Shell then goes outside the facility's gates, but is dragged away from an unseen robot, ending the game. Portal hadn't been in development for as much time as TF2, however, its development history is still pretty cool. Portal was based on a game from 2005 called Narbacular Drop, which was made by students of the DIGIPEN Institute of Technology. The original team was hired by Valve after Valve developer Robin Walker saw the students' work and offered to show their work to Valve offices, and once Gabe Newell saw it, he hired the team. The team took the core gameplay aspects from their game and took the setting and story from a princess being rescued to a more aperture science approach. Then the team started. They initially developed the gameplay, but once playtesters asked where the test chambers led to, they added a narrative to it. They worked with the Half-Life writer Mark Laidlaw to include Portal's story to the Half-Life universe. Meanwhile, the 2 main writers for Portal, Eric Wolpaw and Chet Falizek, wrote the story. They developed the characters GLaDOS, and she is central to the plot of Portal, a rogue AI who forces the player to go through each level or test chamber in the name of science for a reward: cake. Even with these hits on the Orange Box, Valve still continued doing major things, like acquiring Turtle Rock Studios, which was renamed Valve South. Turtle Rock Studios developed 2 games for Valve during their partnership: Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2. Left 4 Dead's development started in mid-2005 and was first revealed in Christmas of 2006 via a 6-page article on PC Gamer UK. Then a trailer was released along with the Orange Box, then later playable at the Showdown 2007 LAN in San Jose, and again at QuakeCon 2007. It was officially announced on November 20th, 2006, and then once acquired by Valve in 2008, was finally released on Steam on October 15th, 2008. It received great reviews and many gamers liked it. Its gameplay is a standard player versus environment, with a maximum of 4 players on each team. Any slots that aren't used will be computer players. Its gameplay is broken down into campaigns with 5 levels per campaign. Each player starts the campaign with either a handgun, 2 handguns, or a melee weapon, and gets better weapons as they progress through the campaign. Left 4 Dead was good enough that it received a sequel, Left 4 Dead 2, in 2009. It plays and acts the same as Left 4 Dead 2, but with new levels and new characters. After Left 4 Dead 2, Valve continued their work at the start of the 2010s, releasing Alien Swarm, which was a remake of a mod of Unreal Tournament 2004, then released Portal 2 in 2011, which was a sequel that takes place after Portal. It added new levels and characters, and is considered to be one of Valve's greatest works, like the original Portal. Portal 2 starts with Shell waking up in a stasis chamber that looks like it's going to collapse. However, Wheatley, a personality core, guides her through the test chambers so they can escape. However, they reactivate GLaDOS, who separates them and rebuilds the lab. However, Wheatley and Shell reunite and fight GLaDOS, and in doing so, Shell replaces GLaDOS with Wheatley as the core in charge of Aperture. But Wheatley goes mad with power and has Shell start testing instead of letting her go, and puts GLaDOS in a potato battery. However, now Shell teams up with GLaDOS and both of them take down Wheatley. However, GLaDOS afterwards doesn't want to deal with Shell anymore, so she lets her go. The development of Portal 2 was different to Portal 1, but not everything was. Most things stayed the same, some mechanics were added like gel that changes how the player interacts with the environment and story, but it doesn't change by much. As you can tell, the game continues where Portal left off, however it expands on the world of Portal, and also the world of Half-Life. Both are proven to share the same universe with a ship, the Borealis. It is shown and mentioned in both of Half-Life 2's episodes, and the Borealis' dry dock can be found in Portal 2. On top of that, new characters are added, and their lore starts in this game, like Wheatley. Following Portal 2, Counter-Strike Global Offensive was released in 2012, which plays similar to older Counter-Strike games, just with newer graphics, mechanics, and overall a new everything. The last major title Valve released in the 2010s was Dota 2 in 2013. It's a multiplayer online battle arena and a sequel to a mod of Warcraft 3 called Dota. Now, Valve made fewer games in the 2010s than in the 2000s, mainly due to the monetary success of their online game distribution site, Steam. Additionally, they took more effort into making in-game content or DLC. However, after 2013, Valve didn't really make games, and a couple years later, rarely updated their older titles with in-game content, or DLC, like Team Fortress 2, receiving its last major update in 2017, and Left 4 Dead 2 receiving its last update in 2020. Valve focused primarily on Steam and only released DLC and updates to mainly Counter-Strike Global Offensive and Dota 2. That's not to say Valve didn't make games past 2013, because they did. Games like The Lab in 2016, Artifact in 2018, Aperture Hand Lab and Dota Underlords in 2019, and Aperture Desk Job in 2022. However, The Lab, Aperture Hand Lab, and Aperture Desk Job were more showcases than games. Artifact itself wasn't received at all well. Artifact, although rated good from review sites, players disliked it. It wasn't free and had a pay-to-win model. It was badly received, to the point where even Gabe Newell recognized its failures in 2020. Lastly, Dota Underlords was a strategy battler in the world of Dota, and was a pretty good game, but nothing close to any of the games made prior to 2013. However, Valve did make a new game engine, called Source 2. Plans were first made in 2007 after Half-Life 2 Episode 2, but the first tech demo wasn't made until 2010. By remaking a Left 4 Dead 2 map, However, it wouldn't be made publicly available until 2014 as a Steam Workshop tool for Dota 2, before a 2015 Game Developers Conference. At that conference, most of the important information was said, like Valve's intentions of making content more efficiently, intentions to support the Vulkan graphics API, and a new in-house physics engine to replace the third-party Havoc tools that Valve used. Later on in 2015, Dota 2 was ported from the Source engine to the Source 2 engine. And all the previously mentioned games were made with the Source 2 engine, and most games after those games would be made with the Source 2 engine, even if there weren't that many games released. This lack of games wasn't helped by the fact that Neil laid off employees to focus on virtual reality in 2013. Reason being, he wanted Valve to release more hardware, like Nintendo, who made hardware with their games. And Valve did make hardware, like the Steam Machine in 2015, the HTC Vive in 2016, the Valve Index in 2019, and most recently, the Steam Deck in 2022. The Steam Machine was like a form factor computer, but with SteamOS, which made it more like a console. The HTC Vive was a VR headset, which Valve worked with HTC to make. However, the Valve Index was Valve's own VR headset. Lastly, the Steam Deck. It was like a portable console that could run Steam games on the go. However, even though these projects led to very few games being released, Valve's VR work did lead to the last major game from Valve to be released: Half-Life Alyx. Half-Life Alyx, released in 2020 and takes place 5 years before Half-Life 2, and follows Alyx Vance. Alyx and her father, Eli Vance, try to steal Combine resources, but get caught. Alyx escapes with the help of a new character, Russell, who informs that Eli will be transported to Nova Prospect. The player as Alyx Vance has to go and intercept the train carrying Eli Vance and rescue Eli. Sounds amazing. However, this plot wasn't developed by former Half-Life writers Eric Wolpaw and Jay Pinkerton, since they both turned down invitations to return to working for Valve during the early development. So Rob Yeshkob stepped in, but his version was dark and serious, which forced Valve to delay the release of Alyx so they could deal with the story. To deal with the story, Valve were able to get both Eric and Jay to return, brought in new writers, Jake Rodkin and Sean Vanaman from Campo Santo, which was another company Valve had acquired, and also had Mark Laidlaw provide consultation since he had retired in 2016. While all the writers developed the plot, Valve developers had been working on the gameplay since 2017. The team that worked on Half-Life Alyx was made up of 80 people, which was the largest in Valve's history. Valve developers built prototypes using Half-Life 2 models and chose prototypes they thought would work best in VR. As they moved on, Valve thought that Half-Life fit into VR surprisingly well. However, it also taught them that pretty much all aspects of development was different than traditional PC gaming. For example, unlike regular keyboard and mouse movement, VR would cause motion sickness, and Valve did their best to decrease the intensity of motion sickness. One way that Valve decreased the intensity of motion sickness was they took inspiration from a 2018 VR game called Budget Cuts, which used a teleportation method. However, to push players to not just teleport through levels, they added elements that would get their attention and slow the players down, like threats and collectibles. Another key part of development that was different was combat. First and foremost, Valve wanted every weapon to be able to be only used with one hand, so players could have a hand free at all times. So weapons are one-handed in this game. You would think under that definition, melee weapons would be perfect, like the iconic crowbar. However, Valve didn't include melee weapons since they just flat out didn't work well. They would catch onto other objects in the world as they moved, and created a fair amount of confusion. Additionally, the iconic crowbar wasn't used since it was related to Gordon Freeman, and Valve wanted Alyx to be different than Gordon, since they felt she was more of a hacker and tinkerer. This time, Valve's use of Valve Time was very much worth it for the development of Half-Life Alyx. Almost all of Valve's work was received amazingly, being rated highly by rating sites and being nominated for many awards, some of which it won. Additionally, its sales were great. On the day of release, it had 43,000 concurrent players, and the game helped Valve sell their index to the point where they sold all units by mid-January of 2020. Of course, that leaves us to now. Valve showed they can be a titan of developers still with Half-Life Alyx. However, with its focus on Steam and making hardware, Valve is leaving many of its communities in a state of hope at best and at worst annoyance towards Valve. However, nonetheless, Valve worked its way to become a titan in the gaming industry. They certainly can maintain that position. We are just now left to wonder, where will Valve head in the future?